We're happy for you.
So it's going to be Houston, right?
I mean, it's looking that way.
Yeah, I'm not going to be the one to say that because it was this time slot last week. You know, you and I riffing on MLB and stuff like that, where like tried to channel my inner Abner Doubleday, my inner who's the Greg Amsinger. Tried to channel my inner Greg Amsinger, who used to join 9 to noon frequently, and I lost his number. Cool guy. And I'm like, no, Texas can't hit. They've gone punchless into every single night. And guess what? Marcus Semien all of a sudden sucks. I think Semien over the last week's hitting 750 was like 13.
I mean, that whole division over the last
I couldn't believe it.
6 weeks, basically.
Yeah.
Teams are getting swept and then turning around and sweeping another team. And then there's no rhyme or reason to it. I mean, Houston surged ahead going back like 3 or 4 weeks. Then they fell into third because they were playing. They were getting beat by the Royals, and then all of a sudden now we're a week out or less than a week out basically, and they are not going to win. It looks like not going to win the division, but in commanding position now to get one of the wild cards. Whereas a month ago, Seattle was the hottest team in baseball, and now they might be on the outside looking in. Toronto, which is not in that division, but Toronto has been incredibly up and down. For a minute, it looked like they were about to play themselves completely out of the wild card, and now they look like they have a spot secured,
right? Regardless
of what happens with the West. Meanwhile, the Twins are sitting there. They had their division wrapped up, I don't know, with almost a month to go, and they're just kind of waiting who gets to them, who falls to that 6th spot. And there's still a little bit of drama because these teams are still playing each other a little bit down the stretch. But yeah, it's looking like Houston, which I've covered a 3-game series at Target Field against the Houston Astros in the playoffs before. It didn't go all that well.
Yeah. See, Houston, I mean, it's just difficult. I don't want to say I hate these teams. It's too strong. But the push button teams, it's the Astros are push button. Now, they may push the button and something bad might come out.
Right.
But like what you see during the totality of the marathon compared to what they know they can get to.
It doesn't necessarily matter what happened over the last 6 months. I mean, assuming they're relatively healthy and all that. But, I mean, it's like I remember the old Houston Rockets after they won the first title. And then I think the second year with like Rudy Tomjanovich and Hakeem, they like had the 6th seed.
Yeah.
And I remember Tomjanovich saying, if you think we're worried about being the 6th seed, you know who's worried about us being in the 6th seed? The 3 seed, because they got to play us. And I think that's a lot of it. It's like,
that's brilliant.
Yes, are the Astros a great team on paper based on what they've done? Well, no, they're going to end up winning, 88 games or something like that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, when the bell rings for game 1, they're still the defending champs. You're still going to have to face Valdez and Verlander. You're still going to face Alvarez and Bregman and Altuve.
They're going to be
Tucker.
taking a million pitches.
Right, and it's still going to be the same thing. Now, at some point, with these sort of championship, like you said, push-button teams, at some point, it ends. I mean, it's going to end at some point. We see that. We saw that with the Patriots. We see that with the Yankees. And you can be the team that ends that. I mean, at some point, Verlander's going to show his age. At some point, the hitters that they have in that lineup are going to not come through in the playoffs. And so, with that said, I'd rather face, Seattle, Texas.
Yeah. I'd rather
probably even Toronto. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
but I think it's not impossible that the Twins could avoid the Astros, but it's definitely the last, 5 or 6 days have really played out heavily with that being the likely matchup. Then if that's the case, what you're rooting for is the Astros at least having to play out the string for the final weekend of the season, those games at least mattering to them, so that they are forced to start, let's say, Verlander on one of the weekend games.
Yeah.
So then he can't start game 1 or game 2 of the playoffs. Right. Same thing with Framber Valdez. You make them use their relievers a little bit down the stretch, make them use their starters so that the version you get, while it's still the big names, there's a big difference if they're lined up to have Verlander, Valdez, Verlander versus whoever their third or fourth starter is going to have to start that game. So there's still a little bit of drama, even if it continues to play out the way it's played out so far.
Aaron Gleeman, The Athletic, theathletic.com. What a wonderful time to subscribe to said website with Major League Baseball playoffs beginning a week from today. And the National Football League underway, too. NBA and NHL on the horizon. And don't forget about Dion just stealing the show everywhere, win or lose. The Athletic, theathletic.com. And I've been a subscriber since day one. Since you weren't covering, did you watch Verlander last night?
I mean, I saw like some of the highlights
All right.
and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, or did you follow it, should I say?
Yeah.
But I mean, is this not HOF Bulldog? Just like metaphorical deep breath. All right, let's go out there and get some play-out baseball. Just display what we know we can do. 8 innings, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts, 1 earned run. I didn't watch any of it. I just read about it. But everybody's making it sound like it was old school Bulldog, big-time Verlander.
I mean, that's why you don't want to play the Astros, because the names are big. And even the guys, they got someone like Jose Abreu, who they signed as a free agent, and he's had a terrible season. But he's still going to step to the plate in the second inning of the game one, and it's still former MVP Jose Abreu. And you got all those other big names that have been there forever, too.
Abreu was an MVP with the White Sox?
Yeah, I think it was the short season.
Damn,
but still.
Okay.
I mean, he's been bad this season. Do you want to bet on him not ripping a double in a key spot in a playoff game? And so that's the fear, obviously, is that the names on the back of the jersey perform like they have to make them household names, versus how they have this season when they've had some injuries, they've struggled a little bit, their bullpen hasn't been as strong. They've tried to do some mixing and matching at the bottom of the lineup that hasn't necessarily worked. And yet, at the end of the day, you're going to have to go through Altuve and Bregman and Alvarez and Tucker, and you're going to have to beat Verlander, or you're going to have to beat Valdez. But I don't know that there's like an easy matchup. I mean, there's 4 teams the Twins could theoretically play. I think they're all sort of in the same boat. They're not as scary as the Astros in that they haven't won World Series before. But, the Rangers have been atop that division for 90% of the season. The Blue Jays all of a sudden are very hot. The Mariners, as the Twins found out when they went out there earlier in the second half, have excellent starting pitching and a great player in Julio Rodriguez. I mean, at this level, these teams are going to be at the 85 to 90 win range. Wild card teams, they're going to be flawed teams, or they're going to have dealt with some injuries because they'd have 95 wins if that wasn't the case. But that doesn't mean that the version that gets trotted out when the bell rings for game one is still not going to be scary. So I think, I would say, do you want to play the Astros if you're a Twins fan? Probably not. But don't work yourself up into a lather that the Astros are 8 steps better than the Blue Jays would be. I mean, look, the Twins are just going to have to play well. Yep. They're not going to. There's no matchup where they can just sleepwalk their way to a series win here.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to play well. You're going to need the guys who have carried you all season, in the Twins' case, Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, and then all the hitters, to perform like they have over the past 6 months. If they do that, you can win games and you can win a series. You got them all at home.
Yeah.
You're fully rested. You might be facing teams that had to start their best guys over the weekend. But, to think that the matchup matters in the sense that you can play less than your best baseball and win, there was no matchup that was going to allow the Twins to do that.
All right. So I'm at the Palatial Purple Palace calling yet another Vikings L while the Twins are playing and it's raining. Okay, so I didn't know that it was raining, and you're at
this
the game.
This was a very interesting experience.
And I read your story the last night or this morning, but I went back over it this morning because of the Chris Paddock part of the equation. Okay, Chris Paddock. Now, 9 to Noon was digging him and Andres Munoz years ago with the Padres, and Paddock just had some badass to him, man. Yeah. Longer hair. He'd come out there and he would, but he comes here and he was at what was it? You see it? What did he hurt?
Tommy John. Yeah, UCL
Tommy
elbow.
John.
He had one with the Padres when he was a young pitcher.
Yeah.
And then last year he made 5 starts for the Twins, blew it out again, and it took him 16 months to get to the point where Sunday afternoon.
How about this?
he comes trotting in from the bullpen to pitch, to get on a major league mound for the first time in basically a year and a half after his second major elbow surgery.
Yeah.
And I was watching him because I'm like, let's see what his mannerisms are like.
Yeah.
I would estimate he got roughly 8 feet from literally putting his feet on the mound when the ump waved it off because of the rain delay. And then at that point, you're just kind of looking at the clock, because if it's a 10 or 15-minute rain delay, you can just kind of throw a little bit underneath. You stay warm, you come back out. But it was 50 minutes. And at that point, even without the Tommy John, you're not going to have a reliever stay in 50 minutes. And especially with the Tommy John, wet weather and all that. So I would expect him to pitch tonight. He actually gets into the box score, technically,
I know.
for that.
I'm looking at it.
It counts as an appearance, so he has a scoreless return appearance, even though he didn't even throw a pitch. But also once the rain delay fully kicked in and they put the tarp out and everything, everybody's just kind of killing time. They do, they got some stuff they do on the Jumbotron at Target Field. But then they were just like, you know what? Let's just throw the Vikings game up there. And it briefly looked like a great idea. And then looked like a real sad idea.
Why?
I don't know if you know this, but the Vikings lost the game.
Oh, because of the outcome. I thought it was people like, boo, this is a baseball place.
They were into it because it was like, the Vikings have staged a comeback here.
Wow.
Things are clicking. And then it was like, And when they picked it off in the end zone, groan I heard
That's awesome.
Across Target Field.
That's terrific.
Yeah, it was another chapter in Minnesota sports fandom, I would say.
Well, now it's good to know that the trail of pain, while it's transpiring live,
you can't get away from it no matter where you go.
It happens to just like head down Washington east, make a left on what? Hennepin?
Yeah, it was like I can't think of the name of the movie where like death pursues the people.
Yeah.
Final Destination.
Final Destination.
It's like no matter what you do, you cannot get away from this Vikings loss.
Well, the Sunday.
Yeah. I
mean, there's a little bit of a blueprint here potentially. So, with the most recent story AG wrote, where Raku conceded, Pablo, Sonny, Pablo. But the third most likely will be Joe Ryan.
Yeah.
He didn't say that, right?
Right.
Yeah, but
it will be.
Yeah, but that was the gist of the story. So now I'm looking at Paddock's situation from Sunday. So now you got Ryan, allowed 7 hits, 3 earned runs, fan 10 with 0 walks. Well done on 91 pitches. So let's take that and make it 4 2/3,
right,
or 5,
right,
and then Paddock for 1, and then Varland for 1. Well, that gets you into the 8th,
right? I think this
might be a blueprint.
When you get to the playoffs, whatever you thought were short starts in the regular season become even shorter because you're less motivated to try to get extra innings out of people because it's not a 6-month grind anymore. It's you got to win today.
Yeah.
And if a guy's through 4 as a starter and there's a couple guys on base, you're not going to be as motivated to let him work through it. We can't blow out the bullpen. Well, you can blow out the bullpen. You got fresh guys, and whether it's Paddock, Varland, and also Kenta Maeda, all former or even current really starters who are going to be shifted to the bullpen for the playoffs, they're going to, I think, serve as kind of the bridge from the starters. Now, you'd love to get 6 or 7 out of Sonny Gray, out of Pablo Lopez, out of Joe Ryan, but realistically, it's going to revolve around something closer to 5. And if it goes more than that, that's great. But you're going to want, if a starter's removed after 5, or like you said, midway through the 5th, who gets you from the starter to your actual setup guys and then to Duran? And I think in playoffs past, that's been a tricky spot for the Twins. And it's often a tricky spot for teams because you don't have that much depth there. But the Twins have 3 guys that are good starters who are either coming back from injuries or transitioning to the bullpen. And I think they're going to use all those guys as a bridge. Now, they might not be in the same game, but you could potentially say first game, Maeda is the bridge. Second game, Varland is the bridge. Third game, Paddock is the bridge, or in some order, and kind of use them to get you from either the 5th or the 6th into the 7th or the 8th to the point that you can turn it over to the traditional setup guys, which they're also hoping can still include Brock Stewart, who still needs to come off the injured list here.
Okay, well, the Paddock part of your story, I mean, is first of all, I didn't know that about the 5-0 minutes, and he's 8 feet from the mound.
Yeah,
waiting for it for a year and a half.
It was a real bummer. It was a real buzzkill for him.
That's what it is.
You could even see in his body language, he was like, really?
But I didn't know this, and this is middle-ish of AG's story at The Athletic, theathletic.com, at Aaron Gleeman to learn more about him and The Athletic. Paddock used the lengthy rehab process to add around 20 pounds of muscle to a slender 6'5" frame, and surprised himself by how much stronger he felt and how much harder he was throwing once he would see the finish line ahead. So he threw 9 2/3 in 3 minor league rehab appearances, striking out 15 of 39. Holy cow. And topping out at 98.2 in St. Paul. So 98.2 for Chris Paddock. I mean, is that like above where
Yes.
he and everybody thought he would
That's
be?
the fastest pitch he's ever thrown.
Like even with the Padres?
Yes. I mean, he's threw some 97, 98s, but that was like the fastest recorded pitch that he's ever thrown. Now, some of that is just relievers can go max effort where starters kind of pace themselves. But, he has spent the last 16 months not just trying to get healthy, but trying to get stronger, trying to get better. And, we'll see. It doesn't guarantee anything. He's still going to have to come through and perform and be put in a spot in the playoffs where there's risk involved. You don't have a big track record with him as a reliever or with him in general over the last 2 years. But just from a stuff standpoint, he was, while rehabbing pretty consistently, 96, 97, topping out at 98. He has always had a very good changeup that he's still going to use as a reliever. And it's the same thing with Varland. I mean, people have seen over the last couple of 2-3 weeks, Varland throws really hard as a starter, but it's a whole nother level when he's coming out of the bullpen for 1 or 2 innings at a time. I mean, he hit 100 miles an hour a couple of times. So that's the hope, is that they can, Kenta's not going to be a guy who's throwing 95 out of the pen, but he's proven to be a successful playoff reliever for the Dodgers in the past too. So the hope is you can take a starter who's not good enough to be one of your top 3 choices, and you can convert them to the bullpen and get more upside out of them than you would have as a starter. Now, they still got to do it. Louis Varland's still a rookie. Chris Paddock is a guy who basically hasn't pitched in 2 years, and Kenta Maeda is a 35-year-old who hasn't pitched as a reliever for 3 or 4 years. But the blueprint is at least there for usage that makes their bullpen a lot deeper than it was even a month ago.
What with the celebration when they clinched the division? What was that like? Did you wear goggles?
I didn't know.
Did you wear a ski mask?
I wore
not a ski mask. The big ski glasses.
No, I should. That would have been good. If I do it again, I'm going to go with sandals or flip flops instead of regular shoes, and I'm going to go with goggles. It was. I'd never been in a clinching clubhouse before. It was very interesting. When you're media, you just kind of stand on the sidelines and watch everything. You don't get involved, obviously. But
who said to you something like, "Do I still get to be on the podcast?"
Yes, one of the players came up to me and said, "Can I be on the podcast now?"
Oh, can I be?
And I said, "Yeah." Did you think we wouldn't have had you on at any point in the last 4 or 5 years? Like we weren't holding out.
Yeah. And then they poured champagne on you, and you guys both started dancing to Hot in Here.
You do get a few Budweiser's poured over your head. That's just, if you step into that room, you're fair game at that point, which is definitely fine with me. It was a very interesting experience. I know there are people who hate celebrations of any kind, whether it's a college environment and people are storming the field. Yeah. There are always the old fuddy-duddies who are like, how they were only a slight underdog. They shouldn't storm. Yeah. I'm in favor of celebrating good stuff. Yeah. I'm in favor of having fun. I'm in favor, especially being around this team on a day-to-day basis when they go 8 months, going back to spring training, have all the injuries they had. Is it the greatest division of all time? No, it's not. Yeah. Is it some massive accomplishment that you're going to tell your grandkids about? No. Do you get a ring for it? No. Yeah. But the same way that people celebrate birthdays and anniversaries and weddings, what did you accomplish there? You got a year older. You know what I mean? Like, it's always weird that people are like,
it's a longer conversation.
It's not enough to celebrate. And it's like, there is not a finite amount of celebration in the universe. You're not pulling from a supply of celebration that will be empty. It's not like they're going to get to the World Series and go, damn, we can't celebrate because we celebrated winning the AL Central back in September. So I thought it was fun. I think it's a way to blow off steam and recognize you have accomplished something, no matter the state of the division. And you cannot win a World Series without making the playoffs, and you cannot make the playoffs without winning the division. So go ahead and celebrate it. And guess what? If they win a series, they can celebrate that too. Yeah. And if they win the World Series, there's going to be a few celebrations for that. And so, I don't know. It was fun to see. It was fun to, someone like Kenta Maeda, who is very stoic and kind of calculating on the mound. When you get him in a room popping bottles,
That's awesome.
He's insane.
Yeah.
He's a true maniac.
I saw the video on the athletic page
unbelievable.
of the Paddock story, and I hadn't seen it before, but he's an animal.
He was just like, all right, I'm going to dominate this room for the next hour. I mean, they were playing rock, paper, scissors to see who got basically waterboarded with beer.
Well, it's like bonus when we used to have the Rue parties.
That's true, too. He gets up on stage and all bets are off. Suddenly no one's looking at hockey because Bonus is off to the side dancing. That was, the Kenta Maeda really is the John Bonus of celebratory.
That's Aaron Gleeman of The Athletic and theathletic.com. Twins baseball a week from today to start the wild card series. The question against whom most likely will be the Houston Astros, but who knows? We still have 6 days of play to settle that. More conversation about this, mixed in some Wolves and more around the corner with the Tech.
Yay on the Fan.
Wow, wasn't that fun?
Holy Toledo! Aaron Gleeman, AG, on FM 100.3 WAM.
There is off on a turnaround, flying gambling fools to the Holy Land, Las Vegas.
The Athletic, theathletic.com. If you would like to learn more about AG and the Twins coverage, and Alec Lewis, who joins us Fridays at Buffalo Wild Wings for the Friday Football Feast. He handles the Minnesota Vikings for The Athletic. Russo Radio, a staple for well over a decade with KFAN. He, along with Joe Smith, handle the Minnesota Wild. Dan Hayes, by the side of Aaron, is the beat writer for The Athletic, covering the Twins. And then we get to the Timberwolves, and that's Johnny Athletic.
Yeah, we got a new kid named Krasinski.
Yeah, right.
We think he's got some upside.
Yep, he's so new
as a basketball writer.
Yep, for sure. It's a pseudonym is what he's using. It's not Johnny Athletic. He just put an H in his first name.
Right.
So it's a different. There are two Mike Florios. Okay,
is there really?
Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com, and like a Michael J. Florio at NFL.com.
Oh, he's at NFL. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So he's at NFL.com. He's like a writer. But John handles the Timberwolves. Now, there was a Timberwolves charity event last night. Well, actually, it was Tim Connolly, the GM, his wife. They started this when they were in Denver. And so, therefore, I was asked to come to this and do some stuff. And really didn't. First time I'd done it, I've met Tim before, but I didn't realize just what this was going to be last night. So it's like I'm in there, I'm chatting with Johnny Athletic. And, in walks both Voxes, Michael Grady and Alan Horton. That was cool. Oh, hey, there's Naz Reid. And here comes, they were all there except for Kat. But then, like, Joe Mauer was there. And so did a little covenant catch up with JoJo for a second. And Daniil Hunter and Ed Ingram with the Vikings. And it was just a ballyhooty ping pong event. I got knocked out in the first round.
Who beat you?
Ryan Tanke, who's with the management for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Okay. 28-26.
Who won the whole thing?
You think I stayed?
Oh, no.
No, I got beaten. I left.
I think who I would have bet.
I did my philanthropic part, shook some hands, kissed babies, lost in ping pong, and went home.
Sweat stains?
Old people get tired. So with that said, I started thinking about the Wolves a little bit. And I met Mike Connolly for the first time last night and chatted with him about, playing in Utah and the NBA and stuff and just kind of some surfacey type stuff to start. What an impressive man he is. I mean, he's seen so much, but he just like Patrick Peterson, okay, when he was a corner here. Now he's with Pittsburgh. I mean, Patrick's seen his better days. Mike has seen his better days. When you are self-aware enough to recognize you've seen your better days, well, that puts discretion before valor, which is infrequent. We'll just stop there. And he's like that. He's like, well, I recognize that it's not the same from, this with Utah and stuff like that. But the way he talks about the game is Mike Conley was very impressive. Have you heard him talk much in press conferences or anything?
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of times what you're saying is true across sports, which is there are certain multi-time all-star or, 15-year vets who get to the point that they're scoring 11 points a game instead of 21 points a game.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm not into this anymore. Mm-hmm. And then that's sort of it. There are other guys, like I think of like Vince Carter. Vince Carter, by the end, he was like 42 years old. he's like the 14th guy on the roster, but he enjoyed the leadership component of it, the clubhouse component of it, and if you need him for a couple of games here and there, it's interesting to see, because I've been watching Mike Conley for like 20 years. It's interesting to see he comes in early, and he's one of the fastest point guards. He's a 20-point scorer, and he
reminded me of the NBA version of Patrick Peterson talking to him.
Yes, and to who wants to transition later in their career.
Yeah.
Because if you're willing to take on a secondary role, you can be super valuable because you can bring all that leadership and experience component and still add something. I mean, I think back to Kevin Garnett when he came back here for the second time.
Yeah.
He was scoring 4 points a game, but he was still Kevin Garnett. But there are some guys who get to that point. I think of like Carmelo Anthony or something where it's a hard transition to be like
big time.
Or Allen Iverson is an example too. Allen Iverson went from 1 year scoring 20 and then that was just it. Because it was like, well, he doesn't want to be the fourth guy off the bench anymore. So I give guys like Patrick Peterson, Mike Conley, those type of guys credit. And I was just impressed with him on the court. Like I felt like he was in my mind at least, and I wasn't a huge D'Lo fan, but I thought he was a massive upgrade to me on both sides of the ball than D'Angelo Russell. Now, we'll see if that continues. He's a year older.
How about how bad D'Lo was for the Lakers in the playoffs?
He's always going to have his moments because the guy can shoot it. Yeah. But there's been...
he's always going to have his moment.
Yeah, right. I mean, we saw that it was the same thing with the Lakers. He played himself out of the series, basically. And that's what happened with the Wolves, too. Yeah, I mean, they were playing McLaughlin over him in the playoffs because they just couldn't...
For the Lakers?
Austin Reeves?
Thank you.
Yes, Austin Reeves.
Yeah. Undrafted.
Well, now he got himself paid too. But
right, rolls in there and usurps D'Lo in his moment.
But I mean, there's always a risk with a guy like Conley that he's near the end of the line. 1 year, it's just going to stop happening for him. But I was super impressed with him for the Wolves. I mean, I think he was a huge boost for them. I think you give him another year to work with Gobert and to get some comfort level with Cat. And he's more of a floor general type than a scoring guard. But I think they don't need scoring as much as they need, leadership, passing, defense, obviously. And I don't know, he can provide that for sure.
Also, I hadn't chatted with this guy in quite some time and hadn't seen him in probably even longer. Mike Miller, remember? Yeah, Mike Miller, the sharpshooter from South Dakota.
South Dakota's finest. I was going to say.
Yeah, he's a two-time NBA champion. Okay, I'm sorry. Who knew?
Yeah.
But
he's another guy who transitioned very well.
Say it.
To a late career role player.
Say it. Keep going.
I don't know. What?
Well, this is it's because I didn't talk to Mike.
Okay.
But I was like, hey, Mike Miller.
Yeah.
And then I said to somebody who was like with the Wolves, like part of their management, I'm like, remember when he came here and he started to become like the 10 assist a game guy? Because I'm like, hey, I remember Mike Miller dunking on people.
Yeah. Oh, he was.
And hitting 7 threes a game. Yeah. We get him. He's beating people off the dribble. Yeah. He's trying to be like point guard passer guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, coming out of Florida, he was legit. I mean, he must have been a top 10.
He might have played with white chocolate, did he?
I don't know, but I mean, he could really shoot it. And then, like you said, he had a little bit. There's some guys who they just get pigeon because the NBA is so tough and there's so many good players.
Yeah.
I was listening to JJ Redick's podcast, who's similar to Mike Miller, just a great shooter. And he talked about that. There were some teams he knew they didn't need me to do anything but shoot it. And then he got on other teams where he was like, all right, they're going to need me to run some pick and roll. They're going to need me to defend. They're going to need me to.
Wow.
And you see
if you're
sometimes.
JJ Redick to run pick and roll and not shoot.
Though. I mean,
that should be the last month of your job.
The Wolves have gotten into this too. You get into a spot where, Naz Reid.
Yeah.
Naz Reid was never intended to be a focal point of the offense.
Yeah.
But when Cat goes out and he's putting up 27 and 11 or whatever, you go, oh, that's right. If you give him an opportunity, some of these guys are capable of doing more. Naz Reid got paid. Now, I don't know how they're going to break down all these minutes of bigs this year, but that's a nice problem to have. But I mean, I think Kyle Anderson is an example of that too. You stick Kyle Anderson on some teams and he's going to score 6 points a game. He's still going to be valuable. But we saw last year when the need came up, he was putting up 15 and 8. And it's like, can he do that for 82 games a year? No.
Yeah.
But he has the skill set that he can step up. And I think Conley's a good example of that. I think Kyle Anderson is an example of that. They have some role players here that can do some things if needed. But, I mean, it always just comes down to the big guns. Can Edwards and Gobert and Cat
Are you, speaking of Anthony, in closing, are you, you're back in League Freak's life, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I made a profit the first year, so I got a return.
Okay, say you had the 6th pick. How many teams are in it? 12?
12.
Yeah.
Say you have the 6th pick.
Okay.
Now, let's say you have the 4th pick. would you take Anthony?
No.
6th.
Maybe. I mean, middle of the first round, maybe I'd start to think about it. Because my question with him is, I think
might take Ant first. Hey.
Well, I mean, it's fun to have a guy on the hometown team you can watch every night.
When I took Cat first.
Well, yeah. By the way, Ant, first overall, okay, Jokic and Luka, and I mean all the right names. Yeah. But it's not like he's going to embarrass himself statistically.
But the question with him is
not Lavelle and Nurkic in the second round.
Yeah.
Is that what he?
Well, yeah, Lavelle came in all pissed off at his fantasy basketball team 2-3 years ago, and he's like rattling through it. He's like, Nurkic.
It took him in the second round.
Yeah, it took him in it was third. Taking Yusef Nurkic in the third round is an L waiting to happen in the first place.
Well, if we're talking about Lavelle's L's, did you see what he did on the initials game?
No, but I saw what Charge did last night with Antoine Winfield Jr. Anyway, what happened?
What does that mean?
That doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Lavelle took a big 0, which means he's banned from next year.
Oh, yeah.
And he lost $100 to Sauce.
Oh.
Because Sauce predicted he would get shut out, which is the ultimate insult. It's like, not only... I think you're going to lose. I believe you will not get any points in this game where, I'm going to be honest, getting a point is not that difficult. And he got shut out. And then I saw him that night at the game, and I said, Lavelle, shut out, huh? And he goes, it's only $100. And I was like, okay.
Time columnist.
I didn't realize we had it like that.
Yeah, what's next? Yeah, and by the way, I make more money than Sue Ham, but don't tell him.
Jeez, $100.
Okay. All right, now, any chance we'll see you next Tuesday? Day of game.
I think there might be a game going on right now at Target Field next Tuesday.
So anyway, if it's a night game, we got our teching.
Yeah.
Thank you. Aaron Gleeman at Aaron Gleeman via Twitter. I'm Paul Allen.
The Fan.
Final segment, 9 to noon. Big thanks to Casey's. Not only bringing you the wraps on the show, 9 to noon, but also the final segments. Casey's here for good. And what you can do, wake up in Casey's country. Pizza is breakfast. You've heard that before. You've heard about the mega slices. Check out this deal. Mega slice and a median fountain drink for just $4 at Casey's. Restrictions may apply. See stores for details. I'm going to see the Carver Casey's tomorrow. That's my new Wednesday tradition after we do 9 to noon at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center in Eagan. That's where we'll be on site, on scene. Vikings start practicing for the Carolina Panthers tomorrow, so we're going to be on Reisner watch and see how that thing works. Could he play and start potentially on Sunday in Charlotte? And then the question, of course, from that would be, who's he starting? Is it an Ingram? Is there a Blake Brandel/Brandel sighting? All of that starts tomorrow. We'll continue to speculate. Thanks so much to Ben Gessling, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com, for joining. Heavy conversation, of course, on the Vikings, from can this offense truly be elite? Is it elite? Where does it sit? And issues that arise when you're an 0-3 football team and everything's bad and the fan base is pissed and you turn the ball over all the time and you're not composed in big moments. We covered all of that with Ben Gessling, Aaron Gleeman. You heard him in studio weekly from The Athletic on the Minnesota Twins. Looking forward to basically a week from today. Playoff baseball. So that's fun, podcastable with the free iHeartRadio app in minutes. That's it for me. Thanks for listening to The Fan. Next up, PJ Fleck, Go for Football Weekly. I believe it's at the Tipsy Steer, and you'll get to hear that right here on your home for not only Vikings football, the Wild hockey, Go for Sports, including the Gophers, and then the program proceeds at 1 p.m. Thanks for hanging out with us. Have an awesome Tuesday afternoon.
Wow, wasn't that fun? If it's good news or money, leave a message.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app